Welcome to Strip Cover Lit, where we squeeze the bigger picture out of literature. I'm Adrian Ford, and we are here for another poetry discussion. A poetry discussion that comes to us from one Sylvia Plath. The poem in question is The Colossus. And it reads as such. I shall never get you put back together entirely, pieced, glued, and properly jointed. Mule bray, pig grunt, and bawdy cackles proceed from your great lips. It's worse than a barnyard. Perhaps you consider yourself an oracle, mouthpiece of the dead or of some god or other. 30 years now I have labored to dredge that silt from your throat. I am none the wiser. Scaling little ladders with glue pots and pails of Lysol, I crawl like an ant in mourning over the weedy acres of your brow, to mend the immense skull plates and clear the bald, white tumuli of your eyes. A blue sky out of the Orestia arches above us, O Father, all by yourself. You are pithy and historical as the Roman Forum. I open my lunch on a hill of black cypress. Your fluted bones and acanthine hair are littered in their old anarchy to the horizon line. It would take more than a lightning stroke to create such a ruin. Nights I squat in the cornucopia of your left ear, out of the wind, counting the red stars and those of plum color. The sun rises under the pillar of your tongue. My hours are married to shadow. No longer do I listen for the scrape of a keel on the blank stones of the landing. First off, it wouldn't be a reading from me if I didn't screw something up. So here's what I want to talk a little bit about. One of the things I always try to do on this channel is not focus on what your English professor would consider the correct interpretation of a poem. But I think a good portion of what we're going to talk about today has to start there before we get to the more human element of what's going on here. The Colossus of Rhodes was a massive statue, about 108 feet tall, about the same size as the Statue of Liberty, presumably. I mean, not that the Statue of Liberty is hypothetical, but the Colossus of Rhodes was gone before we were ever able to measure it in feet like us Americans like to do. It was a statue of Helios, which was erected to celebrate a thwarted siege attempt. After the thwarted siege attempt, the siege equipment was sold to fund the statue, and it was completed in 280 BC. I believe it took a dozen years to complete. I think it started in 292 BC, was finished in 280 BC. And you might be saying, hey, that's impressive. 280 years BC, and they had a statue the size of Statue of Liberty? Well, yeah, but not for long, because there was an earthquake and it shattered. It was impressive. How well it was built, we can't tell. It was shattered during an earthquake in 226 BC, after which the Oracle of Delphi said, hey, you made Helios mad. And because you made Helios mad, yeah, I understand. You want to put that statue back up. Kind of cool, but probably not the greatest idea. Probably better forego rebuilding that because Helios is kind of pissed at you. Now, Helios, who was Helios? Helios was the Greek sun god, And one of the interesting things about his place in the pantheon, he was not like Ra. Ra was the god of gods, baby. He was not that powerful. But he was all-seeing. What does the sun do? The sun casts light, not shadow. Cast, maybe not the right word, but the sun illuminates. So everything is out in the open to see. So he was often sort of attributed as being there whenever some type of godly contract was signed. Just an interesting idea there with some of the stuff that we'll get into talking about. Everything out in the open. Yeah, we'll get there. So why this poem? So if you're going with the on-the-nose English professor, hey, I'm here to write a paper, shut the hell up and tell me what the meaning of the poem is. I need those 3 pages by Friday. A lot is made, when talking about Plath, of 2 figures. One, this was edited with an introduction by Ted Hughes. But also Sylvia Plath's father. A lot is made biographically of Sylvia Plath's father when giving a sort of biographical interpretation of her poetry. Sylvia Plath's father died when she was 8. In fact, I believe, like days after her 8th birthday. And so that's got to be hard, right? Losing a parent, I've only known a few people that lost a parent at that age. And one of the things that they always sort of, and maybe this isn't universal, maybe this is just, the people that I've talked to, there's always a bit of shame when they talk about, or something that looks like shame, when they talk about wondering why that parent isn't there for them, right? That's almost everybody has parent issues of a type, right? And when you get into the specifics of what happens, like abusive parent, absent parent, parent that passed away, parent that is overbearing, parent that is underbearing, parent that tries to be your best friend, all of these things sort of come with hallmark stigma, for lack of a better term perhaps. But one of the things with losing a parent at a young age is a sort of, oftentimes, blame. Well, why didn't my father take better care of himself so that he could have been there for me? And at the same time, not guilt, but something close. For someone that's 8 years old, their world is very them-centric. So your father having all of these health problems when you're that young has to be very hard. Because it's hard when you're a child to worry about someone else when you have zero power in your own world. It's hard to be worried about your father figure when you don't have the power to put food on your plate, right? Something like, I think I'm maybe communicating this a bit ham-fistedly, but I think that the point stands. So the passing of a father, your father, when you're a child, monumental. And I don't accidentally use that term. The Colossus here is a fallen idol. The Colossus here is a dead, all-seeing God. All of these things are sort of wrapped up in the idea of fatherhood. When you were a child, did it not seem like your parents knew everything? Did it not seem like every time you screwed something up, your parents figured out it was you, right? One of these types of things. But the Colossus here is the fallen idol. destroyed, dead, fallen to pieces. So what I want to talk about here is this penultimate stanza. In their old anarchy to the horizon line, it would take more than a lightning stroke to create such a ruin. Nights, I squat in the cornucopia of your left ear, out of the wind. So there's a couple interesting things there. Out of the wind, as opposed to out of the sun. Not in the shadows, but out of the wind. Out of the wind because Helios is the sun god, but also the phrase here that was sort of strange to me when I first read it, when I first looked, what is this part doing here? What's going on here? It would take more than a lightning stroke to create such a ruin. What does that mean? Why bring up lightning here? What are we doing? Well, when you talk about Helios, Helios had a mortal son named Phaethon. And Phaethon asked Helios, hey, Pops, your four-horse chariot that you race across the sky in, sunrise, sunset, etc. Can I take that for a spin? Give me the keys to the old Buick, right? And Helios said, it's not a great idea. Very dangerous, hard to do. Only I can sort of control that thing, right? No power steering in the Buick. But he convinced him anyway. And Phaethon got to take the four-horse chariot out for a spin. But, well, it is difficult to control. And during that spin, Phaethon did put Earth a little bit of danger. A little bit, no power steering, taking the corner too hard, almost hit something. Woof, right? So Zeus struck him down with a lightning bolt. So we have here a mention of the mortal child of Helios being struck down. We have a speaker who is sort of trying to appease, a speaker in the poem trying to appease, O Father, Helios. But we also have a mention of, where is it here? Oh, now I've lost it. Something about the, I bet you thought you. Yeah, perhaps you consider yourself an oracle, mouthpiece of the dead, or of some god or other. 30 years now I have labored to dredge the silt from your throat. I am none the wiser. So we have a speaker here. That's playing the fence a little bit, if we're taking this on a metaphorical level. Playing the fence a little bit between being that sort of Phaethon type of incarnation or the oracle. I bet you consider yourself an oracle. The emphasis there being on yourself. Whereas I, here, am the oracle. Or is the speaker saying, O Father, not ironically, but as an appeal to Helios, the fallen Colossus, as Father, and inferring that the lightning, it would take more than a lightning bolt to make this ruin, saying that you were more powerful, Helios, than was I, and a lowly lightning bolt took me out. I don't know what it was that did this. Either way, so I think that there is an interpretation of this. So what I'm saying is write your own damn paper, but I think that there is an interpretation here for the speaker to be either the Oracle of Delphi or faith on, or if you could fuse them somehow, that would be pretty impressive. The reason I want to talk about this poem, however, is that it seems to be, on whatever level, whatever your metaphorical reading of the speaker's voice, the speaker themselves seems to be coming to us through Sylvia Plath herself. I don't believe the speaker here is ever gendered, but obviously written by Sylvia Plath, right? I think that's what we're doing here. You saw the title, you've read the poem. If we are to take a biographical interpretation of this poem and say that it is Sylvia Plath speaking to her father here, the human element here is very interesting. If this is a daughter convening with her long deceased father, boy, that's powerful, right? But what are we doing with it? What are we doing here? Why write the poem? Where's the impetus for this poem? At what point was Sylvia Plath sitting there and thinking, you know what, Pops, I gotta talk to you. Let's sit down. Here's what it seems like to me. This poem was published, what does it say here? If I did the math right, a couple decades after losing her father, roughly around there. Not that that number in particular is important, but think about it. So I'm 36. I was thinking the other day about the great financial recession of 2008, right? I'm like, wow, that was only a couple years after high school. I graduated high school in 2004. We're coming up on 20 years that I've been out of high school. It's hard for me to remember high school. Hard for me to remember it at all. And you know, one of the funny things, when you really look deep into your mind, when you really concentrate on memories, one of the funny things, sit here and think back to high school. And if you have both of your parents, or think about your parents when you were in high school, the image in your mind of your parents, is that what they looked like then? Or is it mainly what they look like now? And you're just sort of transposing it. Like you're doing one of these Disney deep fakes of someone when they were younger, de-aging technology with your mind. You're sort of working it back. You're doing the math in your head. Are you really thinking about, so just take 20 years ago, however old you are. Take 20 years ago and try to think of some memory from then. Surely you can locate some memory from 20 years ago in your life. What did your parents look like then? Okay, great. Now, think of a memory from 10 years ago. What did your parents look like then? You see what I'm saying here? How much of our memory is really the memory of the moment? Now, we're also talking about a poem written, 1959, I think, here? It's not like there was tons of videos on the phone. There wasn't a Facebook wall. Is it wall on Facebook? I can't remember. I haven't had a Facebook in so long. There's not a great plethora of photographs and movies and sound bites from your parents, from Sylvia Plath's parents, 20-ish years before when this poem was written. What I think is going on here is, imagine the terrifying realization that someone as massive in your life as a lot of people make out Sylvia Plath's father to have been in her life, which is understandable, right? She was a kid, lost her father. Imagine realizing you're losing that memory. Imagine realizing, wow, I don't remember the sound of my father's voice. Especially Sylvia Plath was 8 when she lost her father. 8 years old. Was that a second grader? I don't remember who my second grade teacher was. I don't remember any of the people I knew in the second grade. I know my mother was there. I don't remember what my mother looked like. You know what I'm saying? So this idea of slowly losing the memory of your father, your mother, someone this consequential to you. And what you're doing here in this poem is our speaker in this poem is only convening with this fallen idol piece by piece, not in whole. Not in whole. So maybe you have some memory of, maybe you had a grandparent that you lost. Hopefully not many of us have lost parents by second grade, right? But maybe your grandparents you lost in the second-ish grade. What are your memories from that person? I know there's a lot of people who make a big deal. A lot of people from my grandparents' generation wore boots. The men wore boots. And that's one thing that seems to stand out to some people. My grandfather wore boots. Well, then your memory of your grandfather is those boots, not his voice. You have a different memory of your grandfather that's the voice. You have a different memory of your grandfather that was his hand, right? He used to ruffle your hair or something. Putting these pieces together, these memories together of someone that you have been missing for so long. I shall never get you put together entirely, pieced, glued, and properly jointed. Mule bray, pig grunt, and bawdy cackles proceed from your great lips. It's worse than a barnyard. The speaker here is struggling with fragmented memories. In the poem, the speaker is dealing with fragments of the fallen idol, fragments of the fallen father figure, fragments of the all-seeing God. Like I say, I'm 36. My mother is 63. Something that's been very hard for me to deal with recently is my mother retired, and she's now speaking in finite terms. She's not 90. She's 63. But I started thinking about it. Do I remember my parents at my age? Yeah, I must. My mother had me when she was 27. 36 when I was 9. That's how old I am now. 9 years old, that's the third grade. Right about the same time that Sylvia Plath lost her father. So thinking about it, just doing that math, that mental math, I'm sure I have memories of my mother from when I was in the third grade, right? So my mother at 63 now is my lifetime from those memories. Seems like a long time. 36 feels really old. But when I think back half of that to when I was 8, I remember being a senior in high school. That feels like a pretty long time ago. But chunks of it went real fast. right? So I can imagine waking up at 63 and thinking, wow, I really don't know how I got this far. But there's a whole lot less left than I've already had. And that idea of speaking in finite terms, really finite terms, we're gonna, hey, knock out of it, right? Every time she starts doing it. But I wonder if that's what we're getting in this poem. Is our speaker's contemplation of the fact that they have come so far and only have so far to go until the father was when he died. I don't know how old Sylvia Plath's father was when he died. Sylvia Plath was like 31, right? 27, 31, somewhere in there, something like that. It's just real daunting to think about these things in terms like this, when you think about how short years really are. Anyway, that's all I have for this poetry discussion, The Colossus by Sylvia Plath. And I hope to have you back for the next poetry discussion. Got over 100 poetry discussions on the channel. I hope to have you back for the next poetry review, short story discussion, short story review, novel read along, anything, opening paragraph discussion, anything it is that I'm doing on this channel. I hope to have you back for that. So it really helps me out here on the channel if you do decide to hit that like button at any point in time. And if you were here by chance but not design, consider hitting that subscribe button to make sure that you stick around for other videos in the future. Because literature is all I talk about on this channel. Literature, writing, stuff like that. So I hope to have you back for the next one.